2 hours in a stuffy
You're
room
with oil there.
with men. Hi, my name's Oz. What happens over the next 2 hours is very much up to you guys, really. I'm here at your disposal. I've got one of most things I do. I've got all my software. We've got a modular. We can just go nuts, really. Who have you all got modulars already?
Yeah.
Yes?
I have.
Yeah.
I haven't.
You haven't got. Have you got analog synths of some kind?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've used them in the past. I've got a dark energy.
Okay. Well, that's a modular. It's just
It's a very small start. Yeah.
Okay,
Just
good.
so in.
Has anybody got any of my stuff already?
No.
Nobody? You
I haven't actually used it.
haven't used it. Okay. Well, that's good because we're all starting from the same position. I wouldn't want to be boring anybody who's already familiar with it. But you're very vaguely aware of it, or you wouldn't have come, presumably. So, well, let's start from the very beginning then. The very beginning would be to ignore all the hardware and start, which is probably where it all started really, is the old Motu interfaces, which as we all know are DC coupled on the output, which means you can plug them straight into a modular and use them to control stuff. So I'm using my cables, what I make and sell, which are these ones. You can make your own, but this is a convenient way to do it. 1/4 inch jack, 3.5 inch. The ring is not connected. This is the thing that Motu recommend, because if you use a stereo to stereo, or if you use a stereo at this end, then the ground doesn't make a connection at the synth end and it doesn't work. If you use a mono one at this end, you short half of the balanced output, which is probably actually fine, but is not recommended. So that's a nice way. So that's just
mono one in stereo.
Yeah. So that should plug for that, and that's your plug that the interface wants, but the ring isn't connected.
Yeah.
So the voltage on the output there is just connected straight into there, and we can plug it in. So I've got. Well, let's start absolutely basic. That's just one lead, which is going into the CV input of this oscillator, which I'll just going for the filter, but I'll just wind that up so you can hear it anyway. Now the trouble with just using one of these to control your synth is that nobody really knows what voltages come out of this. I mean, it differs from unit to unit. It's not calibrated like a normal MIDI to CV converter is, so you need to do that. So the first and foremost bit of Silent Way is what's called the voice controller, which is this one. Now, what this initially does is you can think of it as a MIDI to CV converter, really. So what have I got connected here? I'll try and minimise the number of things I do at once to make it obvious. So the synth itself is coming into input 5 of this, which is just this thing here, which is just going straight out the speaker so you can hear it. Now I've got another copy of that input, which is going into the input of this plugin. That's so this plugin can listen to what the synth does and analyze it when it's doing its calibration routine, which I'll do next. So the outputs of this plugin are by default a pitch CV, a gate, 3 envelopes and a trigger. So I've just got the pitch connected at the moment, which is why I've turned the VCA all the way up so it does it anyway. So in theory, if I press this button here, the calibrate button, it's going to chuck out a load of different voltages out of here, listen to what the synth does, and figure out therefore what pitch corresponds to which voltage, right? Fingers crossed.
Convenient.
Yeah. It starts off really low, which is probably why you're not hearing anything. There you go. So, and it draws this little graph, which is frequency in that direction, which is basically MIDI note 0 to 127 because it takes MIDI as its input. And then that's the voltage it knows it has to chuck out. Now you can see at the moment it's basically covering all the low notes. Not going any higher than that because the thing started very low and the output The output range of these interfaces, while useful, is not that great. It's about plus or minus 3 volts, which gives you a 6-octave span, and if you start too low, you don't get very high. So if we just change the starting position a bit, maybe not there, that's about 0 volts. So if we could centre that a bit higher, maybe, and then do the thing again, well, any luck, we'll get there. There you go. Lovely. So now you can see the whole voltage range of the output is generating a useful note now, all the way from that very low note there. So the one thing I didn't bring with me was a keyboard, which would have made it a lot easier to demonstrate anything vaguely musical, so I apologise for that. But so quite a useful range of notes now. And nicely in tune, which is all lovely. I mean, and let's just mute that so I don't have to talk over it. The joy of this system is that you can now use this to control the synth, but also because it's done the calibration, it's taken into account any kind of weirdness and non-linearities in the system to some extent. So if you've got an oscillator that doesn't actually track 1 volt per octave properly, this is now keyed into that and is working to correct that. So by the same token, if you plug this into a buckler which runs at 1.2 volts per octave, it just works exactly the same. It doesn't really care how many volts there are per frequency, it just deals with it. So if we plug in this lead that I briefly had in my mouth, this was plugged into that one, which was the gate, which was going into the envelope generator. Envelope generator's output on a very wobbly socket is going into the input of this thing here, which is apparently like a low pass gate doohickey. So I've muted it, that's why I'm not hearing it. So now if on my other output, I'm using that as a gate to trigger the envelope generator, which is generating the envelope. So that's your absolutely bog standard CV gate setup using the voice controller. It can do so much more. The first thing, I mean, I don't know where to start really. The joy of this is it's just software, right? So you can just throw features at it and it's all free, which is fantastic. So if you suddenly decided you say you needed vibrato, rather than having to patch in a vibrato, you can just dial that in on the software, blah blah blah. There's I won't go through every feature, that'll just take forever. Portamento, that's a nice one, isn't it? Everybody likes portamento. All kind of re-trigger modes, that's on newest modes. So all the things you expect on a polysynth. So lowest mode priority. So all your things you'd expect on a monosynth.
I've got a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead. Let's say any questions, just shout out at any time.
Does it play nicely with Max for Live? So it's open-ended at the software end as much as
yes, yeah. I have. Well, there are a number of questions there.
Okay, sorry.
The plugins themselves do load in Max, but as I understand it, Max's support for plugins can be a bit flaky.
Yep.
So yes, it works, but as well as any plugins work in Max. I do have some, just in the last few weeks I've released some Max externals to do some specific things, which I'll come to a bit later on. But do remind me about that. But currently, other than the plugin, I don't currently have an auto calibration external for Max, say.
Okay.
Which I could do, probably would do, but I probably wouldn't want to make that freely available, which means then no, you're starting releasing paid for Max externals, and everybody goes, "Oh, Max is open!"
Yeah. Okay.
And I'd be cast out. Whereas the Max externals, I have done a link to the hardware, so I can put them out for free because you have to buy the hardware. So I don't really care if I give the software away. But this software, yeah. So the software thing works with. It obviously works with my own stuff, but it does work with other things as well, which is worth stressing. So what was I doing? I was running through some features. So as well as gates, and there's a separate trigger output, so you can re-trigger envelopes without all the usual stuff. It's got these envelopes as well. So this is where the whole software side of things starts to get interesting. So rather than having to buy a ton of modules, you can do some things in software, like envelope generators. I mean, analog envelope generators do sound nice, but if you want 3 more from nowhere, you can just get them from the software. So if I move that, well, I could do that in software, but I'll do it by physically moving the plug, just to make the point. If I make a new track, this track is going to access the plugin's got 6 outputs, as I mentioned. So if you want to get more than the first 2, you have to make another track and route them out to there, and then that output, with any luck, is now an envelope, which was from previously going to there. So if I just plug that one into there instead, did I plug the right one
in here?
Yes, you're right, sorry. Oh yes, that's the audio, isn't it?
Yeah.
Thank you, technical support. There we go. So that is this envelope, so if I want it longer. So that's kind of handy if you just need more envelopes, and these are actually quite complex beasts. If you expose this control level here, it's like multi-stage attacks and releases and stuff. So that's the voice controller. What else does it do? Oh, it does velocity output as well. There's this handy output matrix here, which routes a bunch of signals to this plug-in 6 outputs. So normally you've got pitch gate, envelope, 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 trigger on the 6 outputs, but there's also a velocity signal you can replace or mix it.
No,
Of course.
We haven't started long, we're only just kind of getting into it.
Yes.
So.
Hi, I'm Oz.
Hi, Anthony.
Anthony, nice to meet you. Your level of experience was? You've got a modular?
I've only got an ARP 7 module, I've not got
the
bits, components or anything.
Okay, good. So that's another one who's not used my stuff. Excellent. Okay, so nobody knows anything. That's fantastic. Apart from what I've just told you. Yeah, so that's kind of that, really. Apart from all the other stuff it does. Any more questions about that one?
Do the envelopes cycle?
They don't. That's an often made request. But we have LFOs. So let's...
They look nice and complex, the envelopes.
Yes, they are. So rather than... So that's kind of made the point that you can use this with the Motu, but from now I'm going to switch to using my modules just because it makes things a little bit more flexible. So if I just kind of repatch this, what do I need to do? Let's get rid of these for a start. Let's try and be tidy. And I need to do this. What was that one? Whoops. Right. Oh, no. Oh. The reason why I've got this thing as well is because it's got an ADAT output on it, whereas this thing's only got SPDIF. And I want to show you both. So that was the input, right? So that's... Okay. So let's just talk briefly about the hardware before I start initially setting up exactly the same thing with my modules. These are all, or most of my modules, okay? The two kind of entry points to the system, as it were, are that one and that one. That's an ES3. That is takes an ADAT from the interface, which is 8 channels of digital audio, up to 48 kilohertz, 24-bit. This is an ES4, which takes SPDIF, which is up to 192 kilohertz, 24-bit. Well, no, it's 20-bit because it's SPD. So depending on what you have available to work with, one or the other of those will almost certainly fit into your system. The ES3 is by far the most popular because it's got more outputs down a single cable, and it's tremendously easy to use. The ES4, because there's only actual 2 audio channels, there's some jiggery-pokery to get a useful number of signals down that pipe, as it were, which makes it slightly more complicated to work with. So we'll start with the ES3, and we'll go over the other modules later. So what I'll start with then is do the same thing as I just did. Well, no, I won't even start with that. Just want to make the point initially that although this is a Eurorack module for controlling things with DC coupled CV outputs, it is basically an audio interface. It's just a 24-bit digital audio converter. So if you want to stick audio down it, you just do exactly that. Let's I need to switch interface. That would be a good thing to do. Okay. Let's use those. So I've got them plugged in already. Where's that one going? I think that's probably unplugged by now. So if I just got a drum loop here. Got lights flashing? Yes, we've got activity. If I plug this in, what should we do to a drum loop? Filter it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or delay. Let's delay it. Delay the fucker. Right. Spring reverb it. Yeah. Let's just mix that somewhere where we can hear it. What can I do? Clipping a little bit by the sound of it. Okay. Well, that's the point. Any audio you've got, stick it into the modular, do stuff to it. So that kind of doubles the utility of it, really. It's not just for controlling the thing, it's for turning the modular into an audio processor as well, really.
So that module actually appears in Ableton as the
Yes, so that's probably worth stressing as well. That just you just route straight to it because it's the ADAT outputs of this thing are on outputs 11 to 18. So you just pull them up.
Super easy.
Super easy, yes. That's why this one's easier than that one, but I'll come to that one later. So let's just start with this. So just imagine that you've basically got 8 extra outputs from your interface, but they're DC coupled, plus or minus 10 volts, which is kind of the full range that a Eurorack generally works with. So for audio that's good because if you just take an audio output from the interface, it's probably running at a lot lower signal level. So you might have to amplify it to get a decent response from the modular. Okay, so that's audio. Let's just plug that back into here. What was I doing? Okay, so let's do the whole frequency. Let's do the whole oscillator thing again. Gate. There's my gate. So we'll just do a CV gate pair out of here. Then I'll need to change, what was I doing? Voice controller, that's there, that now needs to go out of those outputs. I'll stop my drum loop because I don't want to. Well, I could of course send the drum loop to the pitch CV input, which would sound interesting. I won't do that. Just for now. I've lost my CV. This one. Why is it doing that all of a sudden? Have I chosen the...
Yeah, it's
That's an interesting sound. Right, well let's because that'll be, I guess that's calibration's all off because this is generating a much wider voltage range than this one was.
Right.
So we just need to recalibrate. So we might not even need to muck about with the filter. Let's try it as it is first. Now, because this is going over such a huge voltage sweep, it's going to end up with absolute nonsense. Yeah, why is it generating that horrible raspy sound? Let's try a different waveform. So for calibration, you generally want quite a clean waveform. So a saw usually works quite well. Let's try that again. So it's starting really low, and you usually get a bit of garbage at that point. There we go. So you can see now the full range of MIDI notes is occupying less than half the total available voltage range, because this is it's this now, isn't it? This is going over plus or minus 10 volts, which is 20 octaves, which, you know, is a wider range than anybody can possibly hear. And very few oscillators can actually track over that. So that should now be working just fine. So what should we do? What should we do? Let's use some more outputs. So let's there are so many plugins. These are all the plugins that we can look at and talk about. Let's start with an easy one. Let's load up LFO. Okay, so I drop in my iWord. Where's it gone? Why doesn't it want to go there? Software fumble. Okay, so there's my LFO. Select some outputs. Let's use the next two up. Let's get a lead. What would we like to LFO? Fine. What would we like to LFO? Filter frequency. So, output through the S3. Let's get rid of the envelope. And let's just pop that in here. A slightly richer waveform. Let's turn that down. So the LFO does a bunch of things you'd expect from an LFO. It's got lots of different waveforms: sine wave, triangle wave, sawtooth wave. Is that a CV attenuator?
Yeah, yeah.
So suddenly a huge sweep in is, you need to attenuate it a bit. Square wave.
All those waveforms are simultaneous.
Oh yeah.
And they're bipolar kind of thing.
Yeah, so you can dial in fairly
Shapes.
crazy shapes. There's a noise source there as well, which is not really hearing. Everything has got there's a lot of the outputs on a lot of the plugins have a smooth control, so you can just basically put some slew limiting on it, so that you won't hear that so much. Is there a CV another CV input on this?
For pitch,
Yeah.
you've got to linear or expo, and then if you attenuate.
So if that's your basic square wave, and if I put the smoothing on it, you can see you can hear it slowing it a bit. We can actually see what the thing's doing there exactly. So, and these LFOs go up to audio rate as well. All very, very slow.
Are the two separate LFOs connected anyway, or?
By default, no, but there's they can run in quadrature mode if you want them to be exactly 90 degrees out of phase, which is handy for if you want to do like quadraphonic panning or something like that. And these can also be tempo synced, which is where the whole joy of having the LFO on the computer rather than the modular comes into play. So if I get my little drum loop up and and then put this onto. So instant dubstep, if you can. And this is all, you know, you can use parameter automation in your workstation to automate this and change the frequency. So if you can imagine kind of having something or parameter automation, you can have lots of fun with that.
Everything is automatable, yeah?
Everything is automatable. Yeah, it's just a normal plugin, right? So anything that you can automate, and it's all MIDI mappable and stuff. Actually, let's have a quick straw poll of workstations, audio workstations. Live users, Cubase users, Logic users. Cubase.
Logic.
Logic.
Yeah, Logic.
Live. Okay, so I always use Live to kind of muck about and demo in because it's the routing is a lot more flexible, and when you start needing to sort of feed these into each other, it's so much easier to do this in Live. All of this is possible in any of them to some extent. Cubase does make it particularly hard, has to be said, but Logic certainly works okay. And Live is good. Tempo synced random I quite enjoy. Especially on pitch. Anyway, so that's the LFOs. What else do they do? I just want to do some of the other things. Let's put it back on this filter CD. What stopped that making noise?
You press stop?
I did, but it wasn't the. Oh, did I mute it? The thing isn't gated, is it? So why should we still? Why can't we hear it anymore? What did I do? Let's press start again, see if it comes back. No, you see. What did I do that is... Oh, it's
just very low frequency.
There it goes. Oh, let's go back to the tempo sync. Have I just completely forgotten what I was doing?
I think to cut off high so you're not...
Oh yeah, you did that.
Sorry, yeah.
That's okay. I'm glad I've got a helper. So, this is really good. Other things that make this more than a traditional LFO, there's asymmetry is a fun one. It kind of, it's like pulse width. If you imagine what pulse width does on a square wave, it just does that, right? But on a sine wave, the asymmetry just kind of stretches the whole wave. It does that, whatever it is. And swing as well. This LFO has swing, so if I do that...
I don't think I've ever seen an LFO swing before.
Exactly. So, yeah, anything you've got, you can kind of apply that swing to it, which is great for this. But the next LFO, which is lots of fun, let's leave that one alone for now. We'll leave it running. There's another LFO I've got, which is called the Step LFO, which looks like this. Now, this little guy, you can kind of think of it like an LFO. Let's just mute the drums. But you draw the waveform like that, basically.
I think Reason had something similar.
Yes. Well, the Reasons one is definitely it's an analog step sequencer. This is kind of an LFO which can become an analog step sequencer. So, okay. That's a 10. So you can draw in stuff. You can have it go. Oh dear. I'm finding this filter very hard to control. It's kind of on or off, isn't it?
Your input might be a bit hard, isn't it? Sounds like it's just sorting out.
Well, also because it's a low pass gate, isn't it? So when I go down, it's fading it out. So if we actually got anything that's a bit...
I think if you turn it beyond the low pass, it becomes a
Yeah,
filter.
the low pass is on when it's fully to the left, isn't it?
In theory.
That's
Yeah,
right,
that's,
hang on. This looks like a filter. Let's try this.
and there's a normal VCA there.
No, it's gone away completely. Does this thing work? There we go. There we go. Alright, let's try that instead. What's the difference between FM and VCFM on this, we wonder? Any idea? That'll do. Anyway, what was I showing you there? Yes, if you actually want to think of this as a bit like an LFO, you've got those, you can make it interpolated rather than steps, or you can have it steps. And you can, this, because it's like it is steps like that, but it's also an LFO in that you can still do the same asymmetry thing and the swing thing, but what, as you suggest, what this does suggest to you is to use this as a step sequencer. So let's repatch it as that. If I take the gate, oh, now we haven't got an LFO patched in. Oh, this is really convenient. So that is now my gate. Let's say, right, now let's use this as, have we got any other VCAs other than this thing? This. Okay.
So that is your in.
Right. That's the out.
That's the audio in here.
Yeah, where's the audio out? Is
you
that
might
one?
just use the mix out up top.
Mix out.
And the bias should be the two.
Okay. And then we need another lead.
It bleeds a little bit, that one.
That's okay. Right. Okay, let's see if this works. So, we'll use top as pitch, bottom as a gate. So we'll put this into unipolar mode so it only sends out positive voltages, and we'll do that, and that's, are we getting, yeah, we're getting something. Oh, hang on, that's not plugged into anything.
Okay.
What was that supposed to be? That was supposed to be the gate, wasn't it? No.
Or that's
supposed to be the output of the envelope generator. That's better. Right. Oh, okay, right, now let's plug the pitch, VCO pitch straight into that. So this is now pitch, that is now gate.
Are each of those outputs, are they sort of hotwired to do a specific task, like one is for pitch? And
No, they're all the same. They're all exactly the same.
Okay.
I'm just switching them around because my plugin happens to be sending those CV outputs now. Right, let's review. That's CV, output of that is now, oh no, that's the filter out. Don't you just love modular stuff? Where's
when
that
it's not
going?
your own
It takes
system.
a while to make something.
Yeah, it's not my own system, isn't it? So, it's kind of doing stuff, isn't it? But we just can't hear it. Why is that?
reasonable. Try this other end. Similar.
Right, let's just. Sorry, everybody.
That's alright.
It's the Z3000 handling telling us what frequency it thinks. So it's that we should be able to hear 700
Yeah,
hertz,
that
right?
should be quite clear, yeah.
Oh, damn. In. Out. In. CV.
The WMD is a bit weird.
Do which one?
This,
Well,
this
let's
is
just
the-
use the low pass gate again.
Well, we keep going to the Optimix, it's quite easy.
Okay,
Audio in, and that's the control.
there's the audio out here.
Yep.
There we go, we can hear that.
And then that's the control. And that's the attenuator for it.
Lovely. Okay, that'll do. So now we've got, you can see that's oh, I should also probably mention at this point that both or either of these can run up to any number of steps you like, up to 96. It defaults to 16, and then if I so I've got scale and offset on here. So the big blue bars are the things I'm actually setting in, and the blue line is the result of the scale and offset. So if I wind that up, and it's just random pitches because I'm just sending any old voltage into the thing, but we'll calibrate that in a minute. I've got this a gate length control now. Recent addition. And let's do the swing thing, shall we? So instant fun. What would be the obvious thing to do next? Stick the calibration on that? Oh, yeah, let's stick a calibration on. So I'll just stop that for a minute before we go mad. There's another plug-in here called Way Quantizer, which does a number of things. A lot of these are kind of designed as handy software replacements for what you might buy a hardware module for. So a quantizer, you probably know what a quantizer does. At the basic level, it will take your continuous CV and chop it into a number of steps. That's particularly useful if those steps actually correspond to semitone values, say, but it will do completely arbitrary chops as well. This would be easier to show on a, if I just do a single sweep up like that. Okay. You got a filter? That'll do. So that's so lost my train of thought. That LFO is now going into this quantizer. So if we turn that side on, a lot of these things work in stereo pairs, as you'll notice, which is simply because most doors like this work in stereo tracks. If everything were totally flexible, then it would make sense for everything just to be mono processors like you have in a modular, but this just makes it a lot more convenient when you're in software like this. So if I turn on, this is in manual quantization mode at the moment. If I wind down the number of steps, that's just arbitrarily chopping the whole voltage range into 30.8 steps. So you can see it's quantized here, it's doing that now. Which is all well and good, but what would be most useful would be if this were actual pitches. So if we put this into calibrated mode and turn on, so the voice controller we saw earlier, that does the calibration, which figures out what voltages can correspond to what pitches. Now we need to get that information into this quantizer thing. Now the voice controller itself, this is the magic curve we want. You can save that as a text file for future use or editing. So I'll just save that now and show you what it looks like. Oh, that's my numerology serial number. There you go. So that's what it writes out. It's just a list of all the MIDI notes for which it has a valid calibration and the voltage value that it needs to chuck out to generate that signal.
An interesting read.
An interesting read. So you can save that, load it back in later if you want, move it between things, and you can also process it. If you look on my website, there are some little scripts I've written that will take that and retune it into a microtonal scale.
It's like a Python script, isn't it?
Yeah, if you're into that kind of thing. There may or may not be easier ways of doing that in retrospect, but that just to make the point that you can process it, feed it back in, and it'll give you that result. But so where's our thing? So we can just load that, but what there is a. I'll have to do that myself. So if I load that in the calibration quantizer, it's now calibrating the outputs to semitone values, but sweeping through an awful lot of them, so you possibly can't hear that. There's also a button to put it into a scale, so let's put it into a pentatonic minor, and then it's restricting the notes it's outputting into that scale. So it's like a tradition. It's like the like the IntelliGel Mu scale or something like that. It's that kind of idea. So if I scale that down a bit, it's all very quiet, but you can hear it's quantizing to those values now. So that means that if we put that back into this is
very useful.
One thing I do live a lot actually. I just load up one of these things and muck about and get riffs going. Now another thing that I've recently put into this, in the spirit of random riffs are cool, is I've integrated a shift register random generator thing, like the Turing machine module, if you've seen that one, or the Noiser ring, I think is similar. So if I just turn that on, I don't know if you're familiar with it. The hardware shift register random thing has a hardware shift register of bits which goes round in a loop. The outputs of the bits feed into a digital to analog converter, so the bit pattern gives you a voltage. And then there's a circuit that does a voltage controlled probability of a bit flipping as it goes round the loop. So at the moment, the randomness control, which is the thing that's usually voltage controlled, is on 0, which means it's utterly random. So this is the kind of the software version of the hardware shift register. You can see it's going round. Every time a bit goes round, it's randomly flipped or not, depending on the probability. So you're getting this kind of random riff, which is itself quite nice. But if you wind that up to 1, then the probability of it changing goes down to 0. So now the pattern is unchanging. And the random pattern that this is generating is being written into the step LFO steps. So you can see them, and you can see that it's because the number of steps here is the same as the length of the pattern, you've got this non-repeating pattern. And the joy of the voltage control probability is if you put that down to slightly less than 1, it'll run, and then at some point it'll randomly change a little bit and sit on that for a while. And at the other end of the scale, there's the -1 probability is where it always changes, but it always flips. So the one you've got randomly change, always never flips, and always flips. And always flips is actually gives you a 0 probability of it changing, except you've got a shifted copy after the normal copy. So this is a 8 length register and a 16 length pattern because it's twice as long because one of them's flipped. It's all good fun, yeah. And then you can have it kind of randomly doing it like that. So that's all good fun. But again, because this is software not hardware, we can have a physically unfeasible length of register if you want a 48 length pattern. And this is where it endless one. Maybe that's not quite so useful. Yes, something big. At this juncture, I'm going to switch to talking about skinning, and there is a segue here. The Silent Away plugins are all skinnable. All the UIs are written in the scripting language, and that's kind of exposed, and you can write a skin and drop it into a folder.
What's the language?
Lua.
That's quite academic.
Yeah, it's good for embedded stuff. So just to, there we go. There's a red version of that. That's just a really simple change the colours job. That's quite a that one. So it colour coordinates the graphs with the knobs. But the reason I mention this is because it's a programming language, you can actually do quite complex stuff in it, and one of the users on the forum has completely in a skin script written a Euclidean pattern generator for the step LFO. So if I take note, I've got 4 groups of controls here. If I switch to the skin and reopen it, now I've got this thing which a user has done in script. And the way this works is it hijacks this control. Are you familiar with Euclidean patterns?
Yeah, a little.
Vaguely? It's a new mathematical algorithm for taking a number of steps and a number of hits. So this is like typically for percussion loops. Take a number of steps and a number of hits, how to distribute those hits most evenly through the space. So if you take a 16-beat pattern and 4 hits, you end up with a 4 on the floor bass drum. If you have 16 and 5, then it intersperses them, and this is apparently the basis of tons of African music and other things. So just to prove that point, let's say it uses these 2 numbers here. So I hit, where's it gone? Euclidean. So that's put 5 hits in a 16-bar pattern. And the fun of this is, which I'm not going to get just from one synth voice, is where you have lots of these things driving lots of different percussion sounds. And you get lovely polyrhythms. But just to prove the point of what can be done in the UI scripts, and then he's got buttons he's put in to shift the pattern around, like that, or put in a random pattern, or reverse it, shuffle, not quite sure what it is. But yeah. So if you want to get your scripting on, you can do most anything, including change all the colours. That's that. I'm going to have to get a drink at some point, but
yeah.
Should we push on to sort of an hour and then?
Will we take a quick 5-minute break in the middle, will we?
Yeah, let's do that.
But
get some air into the room.
Yeah, it is quite warm.
So that's all good fun.
We take a quick break now?
Yeah. Okay. Then we'll move on to
even just 5 minutes, yeah?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
no worries. Okay. I'll leave that running.